ESPN comes very close to giving the Chicago Bears a perfect offseason grade, but apparently there's one move that kept ESPN from giving the Bears that illustrious A in their postseason rankings. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Plus, we're going to look at the chances of Khalil Herbert potentially being a cut candidate per Adam Jahns, and progress is apparently being made towards Arlington Heights with the Chicago Bears, but Chicago still stays the priority for the Bears. We're going to get into all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bears Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bears news and content.
What's going on, Bears fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bears Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related. I'm the host here, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Chi Bears Central on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today. So ESPN gave their postseason rankings, and they gave the Bears a B+, which extremely solid. I think when you look at where the Bears did and you know how they turned around the roster, especially the offense, things like that, there's more than enough reasons for that. But ESPN, in talking about things that they disliked, talked about DAndre Swift, and this is not the first time that we heard that seen the DAndre Swift deal be looked at as a negative, right? I think even DAndre Swift was ranked as one of the most overrated deals in the offseason by another publication. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but ESPN says this: I didn't love the way the Bears rushed to sign Swift for $14 million fully guaranteed when he was coming off a season when he recorded minus 65 rush yards over expectation, per the NFL Next Gen stats. The Bears cut guard Cody Whitehair, who signed with the Raiders on an inexpensive deal, despite him finishing 6th in pass block win rate last season. So, the DAndre Swift move, which was a move that I think a lot of Bears fans, at least per what the interactions on this channel, were favorable with. Now, you know, ESPN raises some concerns over him and Khalil Herbert and how similar they are, and they're not the only ones to do that, but they did pay a running back at the time where the Bears have shown, the NFL has shown, maybe not a lot of running backs are getting paid, and the $14 million fully guaranteed is something that could be looked at as a knock there. There have also been questions about how much of DAndre Swift's production is going to continue, considering that the Bears don't have that type of offensive line. And it's always kind of weary, right? Regardless of how you look at a player, it is always kind of questionable when you sign a player to a big money deal after a career year for them in a lot of ways, right? The most yards in his career with 229 carries, over 1,000 yards, 5 touchdowns, an average of 4.6 per game. A lot of that is all career highs for him. Now, he did have in his rookie year 8 touchdowns with Detroit, but that's a story for another day. But that was the most yards that he ever carried as the featured back there. And, you know, so there's questions. And I think when you look at and add to that what's going on, you know, with running backs around the league, the fact you can always seem to get some quality running backs in each draft, having that question around DAndre Swift is a fair one, right? Not to say that I agree, but I can understand it. But then you got to also look at what the Bears are getting. The Bears are getting a 25-year-old starting caliber running back who is familiar in the division, even though he played that one season in Philly. He is coming off a career year, and he's familiar with the system that Shane Waldron likes to run. He's better in the passing game than Khalil Herbert. He is an upgrade there. And so I can understand the pessimism around the DAndre Swift deal. I just don't, when you look at kind of, like I said, the talk around DAndre Swift kind of since the deal happened, the fact he was listed as one of the most overrated signings, the fact that you know, that ESPN now knocks the DAndre Swift signing is one of the reasons to not give the Bears an A, right? Things like that. But I think that, you know, I'm somebody who, you guys already know, I'm petty. And I love it for players on our teams to have a reason to have a chip on their shoulder. And as people continue to doubt DAndre Swift and what he's going to bring to the Chicago Bears team, hope that he uses it as motivation, right? Hope that he uses it. And he has a offensive coordinator that is going to get him the ball, whether it is coming out the backfield or, you know, well, in the running game or in the pass game. He's going to have that. And it's a fair question to ask, will he be able to have that same type of impact, considering the doubt around the Chicago Bears offensive line? But the doubt around how the production is going to go for DAndre Swift, to me, you look at how he performs, you know, look at all those type of things. I don't personally hold that against DAndre Swift. You're only out there to do what you can. And he's young enough with playing and having enough upside with the way that he performed to where I like the deal for the Chicago Bears, and I like him in this offense. This is going to be, hopefully, at least on paper, one of the most versatile offenses that we have, and to take advantage of mismatches, you want to be able to do that, and also to support your rookie quarterback, right? Yes, they signed DAndre Swift before drafting Caleb Williams, but we all know that they knew what they were doing at that point in time, right? You know, despite some initial thought that the Bears could still be weighing their options, but getting in a running back that is coming off a season like DeAndre Swift had, it's always going to be expensive. And so, that question, and let me ask you guys and throw this to you guys when it comes down to it. Do you look at this? How do you view the signing of DeAndre Swift? Do you look at it as something that maybe didn't need to be done, right? I know a lot of people would have loved the Bears to actually keep Deontay Foreman, considering the season that he had and how he did offer a different compliment to Khalil Herbert. But Khalil Herbert's never had over a 1,000-yard season. He's older than DeAndre Swift on top of that, and he's an expiring contract. So I think if you're looking at it in the cone of just this season, there's enough reason for doubt. But then if you look at it outside of that, if they don't plan on keeping Khalil Herbert, which we'll get into here in a second, it's a great deal. And, yeah, it's guaranteed money. Yeah, it's a running back, but I think DeAndre Swift is going to bring exactly what the Chicago Bears need, in my opinion. And we just got to see what that's going to be and if that actually comes into fruition, as I always say with the Chicago Bears. But in talking about running backs, it's interesting enough. Jahns from The Athletic talked about Khalil Herbert, and he was listing players that are potentially cut candidates for the Chicago Bears. And he said this: wouldn't be surprised if Herbert is considered on the bubble at Hallis Hall. With Swift the clear starter, Johnson only scratching the surface of his potential entering year 2, and Kemp invite Ian Wheeler offering upside, and special teamers like Travis Homer and Kari Blasingame potentially able to handle a couple of totes if called upon. Herbert doesn't have a notable role this season. That is damning. And now, even with me asking if the Bears could look to trade or move on from Khalil Herbert at some point, I've never been that hard on Khalil Herbert, right? That is one of those things that you read and you're like, damn, what did he do to you? What happened there? Why is there some beef between Jahns and Khalil Herbert? But in fairness, in looking at it, there is everything that he said hit, right? Khalil Herbert, who in the most he's had 4 touchdowns in his career, that was in 2022, 2023, only played 12 games, only played 13 games in 2022. He played all 17 his rookie year, but it's been downhill since then. There is enough reason looking at Khalil Herbert with the money paid DeAndre Swift, with Roschon Johnson, if he shows anything, this season, to where the Bears feel comfortable playing him more downs, which if you look at the way last season ended, they definitely, Roschon was in there a lot of snaps at the end of last season. There is enough reason to think that maybe Khalil Herbert is coming into training camp having to prove what his role and the fact that he should earn one. Now, I'm not saying that should be the case. I'm not there in practice. I do like Roschon Johnson overall as a player. I think that he offers something that is just different from the other running backs that we have. He's the only downhill runner with size, a great pass blocker on top of that. And he offers that, and I could see him potentially passing Khalil Herbert on the depth chart. I'm not ready to say that right now, though. I'm not ready to say for sure that, Roschon Johnson's going to come in and he's going to pass up Khalil Herbert there. I'm not ready to say that, but there is a reason to think that that's the case. But then you got to ask yourself, would it be the best use of assets for the Chicago Bears to cut Khalil Herbert, right? And that was surprising. If somebody were to say that the Bears may look to move on from Khalil, all those type of things, I would not be surprised by any of that. But to say that he's somebody that could end up being cut, I'm sorry, that's a bit shocking to me. Now, Jahns is linked in with the team way more than what I am. Still take everything with a grain of salt. But I think ultimately, if the Bears are looking to make moves and maybe even looking to create a little bit more cap space to go after a couple of veterans or anything like that, could Khalil Herbert be outright cut? I think that would send some pretty big shockwaves through Bears fandom if that's the case. And you would have to ask yourself, then why didn't you try to move him at the draft? Why didn't you try to move him in the offseason? Why do we get to the place of cutting somebody who still can be productive? It's not like Khalil Herbert has had seasons where it's like he's had injuries to where it's threatening his career or something. Khalil Herbert can still be a productive back in this league. There's question, of course, around can he be your starting back or featured back, or is he more of a complementary back in a multi-headed running back or backfield running back room? And so those questions are all fair. But to hear as a cut candidate, that's not something that I personally expected, because I do think that there is still value in Khalil Herbert. And I would like to see the Bears try to explore that rather than cut him. But maybe I'm off my rocker. You guys can let me know what you guys think on that down below. Do you think the possibility of cutting Khalil Herbert is there if he does not perform in training camp? Or if Roschon Johnson, for example, because we know DeAndre Swift is probably slated to be the starter. There's not really much question there. I think most people agree on that case of it. But if you are looking at if Roschon comes in to training camp and he looks ready to go, he's grown from last year. That Shane Waldron loves what the versatility of Roschon does. I think Roschon still has a whole hell of a lot to prove. But while you're on a rookie scale deal, that's the time to need to prove that. And I think that those things would have to happen, as well as Ian Wheeler or anybody else would have to show an ability to also be complimentary as the third back in that case. But hey, I mean, this to me just goes to show the fluidity of running backs in the NFL. Like, Khalil Herbert isn't a bad running back, and I don't think anybody would even try to. I'm sure somebody would, just especially because I said it, would try to make the case for Khalil Herbert being bad. But you do have to look at it yourself and saying, now that you brought in somebody with DAndre Swift that has a similar makeup, things like that, but is technically better in a lot of areas, right? Especially more consistent in that running game, things like that. That the writing may be on the wall. As much as we've talked about like Tevin Jenkins and things like that, the writing may be on the wall that Khalil Herbert just is not going to be back in the Chicago Bears uniform. The question is how does he make his exit? Do the Bears let it expire at the end of the season? Also, you got to look at injuries. I'm sorry, but you always have to a degree, always prepare for injuries. And Khalil Herbert, having him on your roster this year in the final year of his rookie deal, if DAndre Swift does go down, you're bringing in somebody who can simulate some of the same things that DAndre Swift can do while still having Roschon Johnson there. So that's a question that the Bears have to answer themselves also. But I think that you got to put Khalil Herbert right up there with Tevin Jenkins as players that they're fighting for a future. And maybe even in Khalil Herbert, he's maybe auditioning for his next job, and Tevin Jenkins is fighting to stay on this team to show that he can stay healthy to get that next contract. And then you also got to look at, as far as cut candidates, I've already told you, Larry Borom is the one that makes the most sense to me. How he would turn into almost no dead money for the Chicago Bears. I would rather kind of look at that before cutting Khalil Herbert, considering Khalil is only a $1 million cap hit, so it's not like you're saving a whole hell of a lot on the cap on outside of that. So you got to look at all these things, man. This is a lot of stuff up in the air, but when I read that yesterday, it really did kind of change my perspective, or not change my perspective. I still have the same perspective, but did make me think of this thing from a different angle as far as Khalil Herbert's future with the Chicago Bears. But you guys can let me know what you guys think on all that, as always, down below. But with that said, let's get into the last topic for today, and that is, we talked a little bit about it yesterday in the episode with Bobby. Me and Bobby did the daily yesterday, but it appears that the Chicago Bears have now maybe are working towards a resolution on the property taxes with the school board and Arlington Heights on the land that they have there. Now, keep in mind, the Bears own the land, so they could be looking for those type of tax breaks regardless if the stadium ends up being there or not. But it was stated that Arlington Heights remain hopeful the Bears will build their new stadium there, and the Bears maintain the stadium focus remains on the museum campus in Chicago. Carmen provided as well that the Arlington Heights board voted 8-1 to allow the Bears billboard to remain up in Illinois Route 53, which is close proximity to the proposed stadium. So we'll see. Hey, this is as Bobby said on yesterday's episode. Shout out to Barry, who really did call this thing that it could come down to the wire as far as the Bears are just doing. They're shaking hands, doing those type of things to ultimately get what they want, and that's the stadium and the epicenter that they were trying to build down there in Arlington Heights. And much like my opinion has not changed much from yesterday either, it's just the simple fact, just get the stadium done. Bears fans, the Bears, everybody deserves a new stadium. And I know some people initially complained about the potential drive and trek to get out to Arlington Heights, but I tell you what, if the Bears in their original plan to build up hotels, entertainment systems, restaurants, really build a small little community down there with the Bears' new stadium being the heart of that, do it. Like that like the Bears have not owned a stadium for their entire history. To be able to have a chance to own something outright is a chance that, the Bears deserve, and having the fan base that we do, I can't be mad if that's the case, man. But we'll see. This is something to definitely monitor. If it does end up pivoting back to Arlington Heights being where the Bears' new stadium is built at, I'm sure it's going to have its detractors. It's going to have the people that support it. But I think ultimately everybody just wants to get this done and to put it behind them in a lot of ways, right? That's what it comes down to, is to put it behind them, and we can move on and start breaking ground so we can get a new stadium in 3-4 years or whatever it's going to take. That's what I think everybody wants to get to. It's just whatever resolution. We ain't got to pay for it. Whatever well, I guess tax, if it comes out of taxes, but just get a resolution done so that we can move on and have a new stadium. And, especially as we're moving to a new phase of the Bears, and hopefully by the time the stadium's built and constructed, we have a team that is a perennial playoff team that's actually going on runs. And we're talking about at that point, Caleb Williams 3 or 4 years into his season, maybe being an MVP candidate, Rome Odunze being one of the best, him and Caleb being one of the better tandems in the NFL. Let's hope that's the point. But to be able to do that in a new stadium it'd be huge, and it'd be fun to watch. And let's hope that that's the case as well for the Chicago Bears next season. And we'll ultimately see, man. Before we go, I want to talk about this one. Comes from, I didn't come up with this one. It's from Sonny Giuliano is the writer on this one. He listed 5 Bears that could be underrated sleepers and who could break out in 2024. I want to go over this list real quick and his thought process behind it. TJ Edwards was listed as number 1 on that list. I think that makes sense. When you look at Edwards last year, 7th in the league in total tackles last year, and the fact that it was his second year in a row finishing in the top 10, TJ Edwards, I don't even know if we can call it a breakout anymore. I think people understand now the commodity that the Chicago Bears have in TJ Edwards. He is great, and we love him, and he is the type of linebacker that Chicago loves. And hopefully that TJ Edwards continues his career here, but this linebacking core overall for the Chicago Bears is one that's going to be big. And seeing TJ Edwards, Tremaine Edmonds to continue to develop together is a huge thing there. But having TJ Edwards on one of your lists as one of the guys who could have who's coming into the season underrated, I think that's just an easy mark to have there. He was the 9th highest graded linebacker in 2023. People can deny TJ Edwards all they want, but TJ Edwards is a beast. Second on this list by Sonny, he had Jaquan Brisker in this list, and I think that people are hoping that Jaquan Brisker is going to actually make a leap this year. He was 3rd on the team in tackles, 105, and passes defended at 9. He also was 2nd among players in the 2022 NFL draft class in solo tackles since being drafted. Jaquan Brisker is a commodity. We know what Jaquan Brisker can bring. He has to refine his game a little bit. And I love that he is cocky. I do like that he talks some shit. I do like that he has some edge, but he has to back it up. And Jaquan Brisker making a leap this year, as long with Jalen Johnson kind of playing this season how last season ended for him, that secondary is going to be, we already know, that's one of my favorite groups to watch this year. And you brought in a veteran in Kevin Byard to pair with him, and they're both excited about that partnership as well. That's going to be exciting. And then the one that I agree on the most as an underrated breakout candidate for the Chicago Bears next year, Javon Dexter. It says what it is. I've talked enough about Javon Dexter over the last couple of weeks where I think everybody understands what my opinion is on Javon Dexter. It's simply put that Javon Dexter needs to be a beast, and I think that he can be that. And I think that a Javon Dexter that has takes a huge step or a leap this season, it completely changes that defensive line along with Montez Sweat. And so the one thing that we've been missing in Matt Eberflus's system and what theoretically makes his defensive system operate the best at is the pressure from the interior. And we've been missing that for a long time, and hopefully we can bring that about. And so if Javon Dexter takes a step this year and becomes one of those players that we look back and say was underrated coming into the season, that's everything that we needed to be. And so we see Montez Sweat saying you're going to see, man, he's pretty good. So the belief is there from not only the team, the front office, the coaching staff, the belief is there in Javon Dexter. And we already talked about the expectations that he set for himself and having that set as the lock screen on his phone. So Javon Dexter, he expects a lot, and I think that we all expect a lot from Javon Dexter as well. Next on this list was Darnell Wright. I mean, I ain't got to say nothing when it comes to Darnell Wright. Like, he's one of the guys on the offensive line that it's important for him to grow, for him to develop. And that guy showed so many flashes last year, so many flashes that he can be one of your linchpins on that offensive line. So underrated, I guess I can see it being underrated considering he's going into his second year. But Darnell Wright, man, hey, huge things for Darnell Wright, man. He was the only rookie offensive lineman that played at least 100 snaps last year and had a 60-plus both run and blocking pass grade as well. Darnell Wright is a solid offensive lineman, and the question is how great can he be? We've seen you be solid. We've seen you be good. We've seen you go through the rookie mistakes, but can you be great on this Bears offensive line? And if you can, it's going to go a long way. And then last on this list, they had Roschon Johnson. This kind of links back in with our first two topics on the episode. Is when it comes to Roschon Johnson making a step this year or making a leap or, being underrated or hitting some great growth will make Khalil Herbert expendable. That just is what it is. And if Roschon Johnson breaks out, especially being the only back that has his size in this running back room and shows himself to be able to be a nice pairing with DAndre Swift, you might as well ride it home. You might as well put Khalil Herbert on the trading block on Madden all ready to start the season. We'll see. I'm not saying that that's a foregone conclusion or anything, but if he has that ability and shows out, yeah, go ahead and write home about it. We already know what's going to happen there. But that's my time for today, guys, man. Make sure you guys are following the show at Shy Bear Central. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, ChicagoBearCentral@gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-27. No, that's the wrong number. That's the Bull Central line. I always give the wrong number. 270-242-9336. We the number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related, thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, Chi-Town up, but bear down. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.